If you look at your games, you'll see that most of them end with a one-move blunder, either on your part or a missed blunder by your opponent. Today, in a single video, I'm going to tell you about all the tactical techniques you need to know and practice in order to win your games. Let's get started. To win confidently and make progress, you absolutely must be able to deliver checkmate in one move. You need to be able to spot them. Many people miss these positions, thinking they'll see them during the game, but in reality that's not the case. So practice checkmating in one move, especially when the king is in the center and has various escape routes. For example, in this position, we see that the king only has the d7 square available, so we need to attack him in such a way that he can't go there. Here we can checkmate our opponent with the bishop on f5. The next tactical device we'll look at is the double attack. A double attack occurs when one piece attacks two of the opponent's pieces at the same time. This could be a minor piece and the king, or it could be just two of the opponent's pieces. A double attack can also happen when we attack a piece and simultaneously create another threat, for example, a threat of checkmate. This is also an incredibly important tactical device that you need to know and practice. For instance, in this position, black can move the queen to b4, attacking the rook on e1, and also threatening the b2 square together with the bishop and queen, creating a checkmate threat for the opponent. Therefore, the rook has to retreat somewhere, and we deliver checkmate, or white has to defend against mate, in which case we capture a whole rook from the opponent. Next, the pin. A pin is when we attack an opponent's piece and it can't move because of what is behind it. The king, or there is a more valuable piece behind it that the opponent doesn't want to lose. For example, here in our position, the queen is pinned and can't move because the opponent's rook is pinning it. But we can use a cross pin. If we place our rook on c1, we pin the opponent's rook in return, and if they capture our rook, we take their queen. If they do nothing, we capture a whole rook. So, after the move rook to c1, if the opponent takes, we capture their queen, gaining a huge advantage. This tactic also deserves your special attention, so you can practice it. Let's move on. The skewer. A skewer is when we attack a piece that has to move, and behind it is another piece that we capture, gaining an advantage. For example, in this position, we can move the bishop to square a3, attacking the queen, and when the queen retreats, we take the rook. In other words, there's no way for him to defend against our attack. This is a skewer, and we gain a material advantage. The next tactical device is the discovered check. A discovered check is a situation where one piece moves, but a completely different piece delivers the attack. And with the piece we move away, we can create serious problems or threats for the opponent because the other piece attacks the king. So now we notice that our bishop is aiming at the opponent's king, and we have the opportunity to move our rook somewhere. And no matter where we move, we will attack the opponent's king anyway. Therefore, the best move here is rook to e8, check. The opponent has to move away. At the same time, we've also pinned the opponent's rook, because during a game, we often use several tactical techniques together. That is, we combine the tactical patterns we've practiced and use them together. The opponent's king has to retreat, and we capture the rook on c8, essentially delivering mate to the black king. An open attack is a similar situation, but the difference here is that we move one piece away, and a completely different piece delivers the attack. For example, here the opponent's rook is lined up against our queen, and if we move our bishop away, it will attack the opponent's strongest piece. But the problem is that when we move the bishop, it seems like we lose our rook. That's why here we can use an open attack in the following way. First, we first capture the opponent's bishop with our queen, luring the king onto a white square. Then, we move our bishop out, attacking the king, and capture the opponent's queen. As a result, we end up with an extra piece and a winning position. If we didn't know this tactical trick, it's unclear how this game would have ended. Next up, double check. A double check is a situation where two pieces attack the opponent's king at the same time. The power of a double check is that you can't block it, and you can't capture both attacking pieces at once. It's simply impossible according to the rules of chess. Therefore, when your opponent is under a double check, the only thing they can do is move their king. So how can we use it here? It seems that the bishop is pinned, and we know that you should put pressure on a pin, create an attack on it. If we move the knight to f6, it looks great, but in that case, our bishop can be captured by the queen, and at the same time, the bishop on h7 is also defended. So, in that case, black doesn't get checkmated. That's why first we can capture the opponent's bishop with the rook, the king takes back, and then the knight goes to f6, and both of our minor pieces attack the king at once. Both the knight and the bishop. The king retreats, and we capture the queen on d7. And we get a winning position because we have 3 minor pieces against a single rook. This position is not difficult to win. The next tactical motif. Trapping a piece. When your opponent's piece has very little space available on the board, we should try to trap it if possible. That is, we should either restrict its movement and then trap it, or there are situations when a piece already has little space, and we gradually drive it into a position with our attacks where it has no more moves, and in this way, we win material. So here, if we immediately attack the opponent's knight, it will move either to b7 or to c6. Therefore, first we should place the bishop on d5, and one of our bishops completely cuts off all of the opponent's moves. This is exactly where the advantage of the bishop over the knight in open positions comes into play. After that, we can calmly attack the knight with a pawn and capture it. Elimination of the defender. The next tactical technique we'll discuss is also quite important. With this technique, we get rid of a strong opponent's piece that is defending some important point. It might be defending some square against mate, for example, so as not to let us deliver it. It might be preventing us from attacking a piece if we want to capture it. Like in this example, for instance. We would really like to place the bishop on d5, because the opponent's queen would have nowhere to go. It doesn't have a single retreat square. But for now, that square is controlled by the knight, and there's nothing good we can do. If we attack the opponent's queen with the rook, the queen can escape to c4. From there, it gets even more squares to run to. That's why we need to eliminate the defender of the d5 square. We need to capture the knight on ef6. And if the opponent recaptures, we play bishop to d5, queen takes d5, knight takes d5. This is also a crucial tactical technique to practice. And the next tactical technique we'll talk about is deflection. As the name suggests, we need to force the opponent's piece to move somewhere, and in doing so, we weaken something. How is this used? For example, right now we see that white has a good move, queen to square a1, after which the king has to retreat to b7 in order to protect his queen. And after that, the bishop can go to square c6. The king has to move forward. We distract the opponent's king from defending the queen. And because of this, we gain a big advantage here and a winning position. Right after the deflection comes the decoy. The difference is that now we force the opponent to move to a position they wouldn't want to. These tactical techniques are similar to each other, but there are differences. Now we can move the rook to h8, forcing the opponent to capture our rook, give a check, and then sacrifice another rook. All of this was necessary so that our queen could reach this square, h7, and we could deliver checkmate. Checkmate for the opponent. And we won this game after sacrificing 2 rooks. Now let's talk a bit more about checkmate. I mentioned that it's essential to be able to deliver checkmate in one move. To be able to notice when the opponent's king is restricted, and to find the finishing blow. Here, it's also important for us to be able to deliver checkmate in 2 moves. That is, it's a bit more difficult, but still. It's not that hard to find, but during a game you need to pay attention to it. So, if the opponent has a weak king, we're on the attack, but we don't have enough rooks. That's why we should consider active continuations, checks, captures, and threats. We can take the pawn on a 3 from our opponent, after which we deliver mate on a 7, because the king can't move to b2 and can't move to b3. This is called Anastasia's mate, when our knight prevents the opponent's king from escaping and the rook attacks him. Here, of course, it's a little different because there's a pawn on c4, but overall it's very similar. Next, overloading. This is a situation where one of the opponent's pieces is doing too much at the same time. That is, it's defending both this and that, and can't be in 2 places at once. For example, in this position, the opponent's queen is simultaneously defending the pawn on g2 and the rook on a5. That's why we should move the bishop to b6. We set up a double attack on the queen and the rook. If the queen retreats, we win material from our opponent. And if they take our bishop, then in that case we would deliver checkmate to the opponent on g2. Here, white also made a pretty strong move, because if we take the queen now, they'll take ours too, and we gain nothing. If we take the rook, we win the exchange, but that's probably not the best we can do. But if we take the rook with our queen, then in that case we actually win 5 points from our opponent. Blocking. This is a situation where, as the name suggests, we block an important file, rank, or diagonal from our opponent to limit their control. For example, in this position, the opponent's rook controls the 8th rank. Even though our queen is under attack, we can consider playing knight to d8 with check, simultaneously attacking the queen. And if, after the move knight to d8, black captures our queen on d5, we deliver checkmate to the opponent on e8 because we have blocked their rook that was controlling the 8th rank. And thus we win this game. This is also a very important tactical technique that you need to know about. The weakness of the back rank. Next, let's talk about that. Well, there are a lot of puzzles on this topic. You need to pay attention when the king is standing there. If there is no escape square and the opponent has few pieces controlling the back rank, we can take advantage of this by simply delivering checkmate. That is, our pieces are now in position, and the opponent only has a rook and a queen controlling that rank. And we can give a check, capture the rook, and deliver checkmate. It's not difficult, but it does require practice. The next point is perpetual check. This is a situation where things are going badly for us and we need to force a draw. Or we might have ideas related to stalemate in the endgame, right? Or we can give the opponent a perpetual check and, despite being far behind in material, force a draw. For example, here we can move the rook to g7, sacrifice it to expose the king, and then give the opponent a perpetual check. Even though we're down 2 rooks on the board, we still manage to draw. The motif of freeing up a square or a file, we've already seen something similar when we discussed another topic. But as I mentioned, in our games, the motifs we talk about often overlap. In this particular case, we again notice that the opponent's king is in a very bad position on h1 because the bishop is controlling that diagonal, taking away escape squares, and the king is trapped. It would be great to expose him, and the only way to do that is by moving the knight to g3. After the opponent captures with the pawn, we've opened up the file, freed the rank for the queen, so we can deliver checkmate. And the king has nowhere to go. Now, the last tactical device that, in my opinion, you need to know is the intermediate move. This is when, in the process of some exchanges, attacks, or threats, you make what seems like a quiet move that stands out from the main line of calculation. For example, in this position, black captures the pawn on c4. And instead of automatically recapturing with the pawn or the king, we play king to c2, attacking the opponent's rook, and at the same time defending the pawn on b2. Because if we had immediately taken the pawn, ours would have been captured in return. But here we keep our pawn as well. We drive away the rook and, as a result, preserve the crucial pawn on b2, which allows us to go on and win this rook endgame. That's all you need to know to confidently spot tactics in both sides' games. Don't overlook or miss things yourself. All that's left is to carefully and thoroughly practice these tactical techniques and to solve problems where you won't know in advance which specific tactic to use. However, you'll apply the knowledge and understanding you've gained and gradually learn to recognize and fully grasp them. You'll start to notice similar situations in your own games. Be sure not to forget to subscribe to the channel if you came here through recommendations, so you don't miss the next useful videos on the channel. Well, we'll see each other again soon. See you soon.